Are you ready for part 2? First, we just reviewed what a narratio is and how to write one for an introduction. But now I want to refine it a little more, specifically to introduce a judicial essay. And if you remember right, a judicial essay is deciding if a past action was right or wrong. Almost like, does it deserve punishment? Was it the wrong thing to do? Something like that. And so this was the issue that I decided from Homer's Odyssey. Considering whether the goddess Athene wrongly influenced Zeus to help Odysseus return home. So we know that Athene did influence Zeus, right? Because of her influence, Zeus said, okay, he can come home. But was it right or wrong of her to do that? So we used to do Annie charts, and now for the judicial essay, we're going to do PDI charts. P stands for prosecute, D stands for defense, and I, of course, still stands for interesting. So let's say I decide to prosecute and say, yes, Athene was wrong, I'm going to prosecute. I'm going to prove it. Well, here's some reasons I came up with why that might be so. Calypso, the goddess Calypso, was very sad. Athene is also a goddess, and here she is taking away someone that another goddess loves, and I don't know that Odysseus makes Calypso happy, but Calypso's very happy being in love with Odysseus, okay? So that's one reason why. Another is that Odysseus, for all of his heroic deeds, he did wrong to Palamedes. Remember? He planted that evidence under his tent so that he was executed for treason. He also did wrong by Philoctetes when he abandoned him and left him alone on that island. Poseidon, the god Poseidon, is still very upset with Odysseus. So here we have another situation where a goddess is trying to get the main big god to let Odysseus come home, but one of her fellow gods is not happy with him, is still angry with him. You could make the argument that if Odysseus is going to get home, he should do it on his own without the help of the gods. That's probably impossible, but it can go in this column. You could also say that that it was wrong for Athene to do this because more people might die on the journey of Odysseus coming home, which in fact is what happened. And then you could also say that people from Ithaca have forgotten him, which his wife and son haven't, but everyone else in the community has forgotten that he was a good man that needed to be honored. So that might be a reason why, okay? So prosecuting is your old AF. It's your old way of saying, yes, Athene was wrong. I agree with that. Now, what if you disagree with that? That's used to be your negative column, now that's called your defense. And so in his defense, you could say, gosh, the guy's been gone for 20 years. Isn't that long enough of a sentence or a punishment? You could point out that Odysseus performed many heroic and helpful deeds in the war, and that in fact they wouldn't have won the war against the Trojans without his help. You could argue the fact that his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus are in great need of his help back in Ithaca, and that they miss him and are longing for him to come home. He himself is longing to go home. Another good argument is, you know what started all this, right? Menelaus went to get his wife Helen back from Paris. So now, Menelaus, who started this whole war, he's home with his wife. Why shouldn't Odysseus get to be home with his wife? And also, all the other Greeks that are still left alive have returned home. So why shouldn't Odysseus get to go home too? Under interesting, I have the goddess Athene has to get permission from the biggest god. And also, that back then there was no internet, no phone, no letters. So there's not much communication, and there's a lot that's left unknown between the different locations and the different people. So this is the kind of issue that you want to use when you do judicial. It's not just should someone have done something, but if you look back, what they did, was it right or wrong? You could say, considering whether Athene wrongly influenced, or you could say, considering whether Athene's actions deserved punishment or some kind of negative consequence, something like that, some kind of wording like that for your issues for your judicial papers. I'm going to defend Odysseus. And I'm going to say, Athene, she did the right thing. So I've got my proofs and I have my subproofs and I'm ready to write my paper, and I'm actually all done, and now I'm going to go back and write the introduction, which is how you should write an essay. And so now I want to refine the narratio. And what I need to do is I need to pick elements of the situation that will elicit pity in defense of Odysseus, right? So if you're defending, you want your narratio to elicit pity. So I would say, for my setting, I would say, back in the island of Ithaca, Penelope and Telemachus are in a very dire situation. The suitors are pushing at Penelope to marry them, and the suitors are taking away Telemachus's inheritance. They're wasting it. And the 20 years is up, and they don't know what to do. And they don't know where Odysseus is, and they want him to come home. So, they haven't done anything wrong, right? So I chose a setting, actors, and actions that give you context. They're essential main points. They sort of ground you. And now when I state this issue, you might have a little idea of what I'm talking about, right? But the ones that I chose are ones that elicit pity, because I'm defending Athene and her decision to help Odysseus get home. But let's say that I'm not going to defend him. Let's say that I'm going to prosecute him. Or actually, I'm going to prosecute Athene, sorry. So to prosecute Athene, I have to pick things that elicit indignation. For this one, I want to elicit indignation. So I might probably talk about Philoctetes and how, as they were traveling, he went crazy, and so instead of helping him and staying with him, he was keeping everyone from sleeping, and so they were going to die eventually if they couldn't sleep. So Odysseus dropped him off on an island and abandoned him and left him there all alone. So that kind of a context or narratio at the beginning, it still helps you know what's going on, but it elicits indignation. I could also tell you the backstory of when Palamedes came to Ithaca and tricked Odysseus and almost killed his baby, right? That might elicit pity. Or I could tell the story of when Odysseus, as my setting could be the actual war in Troy, and I could explain how Odysseus put some loot underneath Palamedes' tent and then accused him of starting a coup against Agamemnon, and he was convicted and murdered, even though it wasn't real evidence, and that would elicit indignation, right? So it's not enough just to give me some context and help me know what's going on. Now I want it to bring about emotion. And so I don't necessarily want you to manipulate emotion. I don't want you to think of it like that. I know that some people do, and that it's always tempting to do that. But the truth is, you should not be trying to persuade somebody of something that you don't believe yourself. So if I truly believe that Athene did the right thing, I feel pretty strongly about it, right? And so I have reasons why. And I want you to feel the same way that I feel about those reasons. And the way that I can help you do that is through what things I choose to tell you about in my opening situation. The same thing, if I want to prosecute, I am quite indignant, and I think that I'm right. And I want you to feel why I'm so indignant and to feel that same feeling that I feel. And so that is really the only thing we're adding to narratio, is that idea, not just choosing essential things and not just choosing a few things, but choosing things that will elicit a certain emotion in the reader. So I hope that helps.